Okay, live. And it's me, Bill Patton, and today's webinar is about building community in tennis under the banner of USA Tennis Coach. And there's going to be some news about USA Tennis Coach in the coming months. But anyway, in a little bit, we're going to have David Smith on here, and I'm not exactly sure how many other people are going to pop on, but if you are interested in coming into the conversation, just go ahead and send me a message on Facebook and I will send you that link. So we're going to talk about building community, and we're going to cover, we're going to start with what are the threats to community? What gets in the way of building community? And then we'll sort of talk about, how to deal with those things one at a time. So, one thing that I think is the ultimate goal of what we want to do is we want to create a culture of acceptance. I think that's going to be a really important part of it, is that, we want everybody who loves tennis and is willing to behave themselves to be able to, something in my water, to be able to, feel like they're part of something, to belong to a community of people. And so, what does community mean, right? It has a lot to do with communicating. It has to do with, this communal thing of we all have, a shared interest. And so let's be unified around that shared interest. So that's really big. And when it comes to building, this shared interest, I think one of the major problems is when, people are bringing other sort of distractions with them into it, and they want to do something else other than the thing that the group wants to do, and what needs are met here, because people have a need to belong, and they have a need to engage and to be in relationship with one another. And, as much as we can build something like that around tennis, then, we really have an opportunity to welcome people in, people of different walks of life, people with different points of view, Democrats, libertarians, Republicans, Green Party people can all get together and play tennis. And we'll talk about politics too, and why politics can be a problem. And that'll be one example of one of the threats to community, is when there's sort of this built-in animosity. So I'm bringing in Dave to the stage now. Hello, Dave. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Bill. It's great to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, been a couple of weeks. So we could do, next time we have a video, we'll do a little more catch up on what's going on with Dave and his knees and stuff. But we're going to save that because we're short on time. So Dave, what's your absolute cutoff today right now?
I've got a meeting at 1 o'clock, which is in 1 hour from now. So I've got to be on the road here in about 45 minutes, 35, 40 minutes.
Okay, good. So just, when you're ready when you need to go, just say goodbye, and then I'll do the wrap up at the end, and that'll be good. So, I don't know how much of that you caught, but, when it comes to building community, I think the number one thing is, it will pretty much happen on its own as long as it's not threatened, and you heard me alluding to politics, I have a particular political bias, right, in life. And yet it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm kind of a confused person when it comes to that. So And that's one thing that helps me. It helps me not to engage in political discussions in the tennis world, right? So, I mean, if we're building community in tennis, then the number one focus is the tennis, right? It's the thing that unifies us. So, sometimes people go out and they look for all these other things to argue about that are divisive. So, what are some of the other threats to community that you see?
Well, certainly if you're in a community that has multiple tennis facilities, I try to take the high road and be inviting of all players who may or may not take part in my specific programs as a regular student, but that may take place. And I do know that other facilities are very toxic and create almost there are the insecurities of, well, I don't want you going to X, Y, and Z because blah blah blah. They'll make excuses, but the bottom line is they fear that somebody else will have a better program and they'll lose that kid or that student. And so I try to make sure we don't even kiddingly refer to any other facility other than saying, hey, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're learning tennis. This is what we are. I mean, we don't even have to say that because people experience our Super Saturday or drop-in clinics or whatever our special events are. And so we don't even have to toot our own horn because they're there. And so we try to maintain that decorum that does not inflict any kind of animosity towards a competing facility or a competing pro. And
Yeah.
and I think that's as equally important as maybe a person that starts talking politics and gets under the skin of somebody, and they're not going to want to come back.
Yeah, no, and at the root of what you're talking about, it has to do with envy and jealousy.
Oh yeah.
Well, and then here's something I learned. I was, when I was young, I read a book on friendship, and in the book it said, never talk bad about somebody behind their back, because then the person that you're talking to will wonder what you're saying behind their back. Right?
Yep.
So that's why I'm always really insulting to people's face. No, and so if you are engaging in that, you're actually internalizing that culture within your club. Right. because then you're also going to be divisive among your tennis pros and your staff and pitting players against each other because you show that you play this game of favoritism, and that's another topic. I mean, I think also when people play favorites, or they have sort of an elitist attitude of, people are at different levels of value to one another, I think that threatens community. Because the person who comes and they can only make it once every 3 months because their job's so busy and they have small children and blah 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 blah, they come quarterly to something, right? And are they less valuable than somebody who's paying you for a private lesson every week? No, they're not. They're the same value. They're the same they're a person, and they need to be treated with that respect of being somebody who maybe would desperately love to be coming for a private lesson every week, but they just can't. But, and then the other thing too is sometimes we treat people better because they're a better player, and then, lesser players are sort of looked down upon. But, if you're going to have a club that's successful and build community, you need lots of brand new 2.5s. You need a thriving 3.0 and 3.5 thing, and you need people matriculating up. So where do we go from there? What's another threat to community, or do you want to go a little deeper on that?
Let me go a little deeper because, as you well know, Bill, we do both mini programs that are drop-in programs, such as Super Saturday or my drop-in junior clinics, and we also have advanced clinics, intermediate, beginner clinics that are defined and not drop-in. And I think if you're a club or you're a facility or you're running a tennis program, you've got to recognize what Bill just said. You may have the players that can't commit to every Wednesday or every Tuesday or every Saturday morning, or you may end up with players who are not very well versed in tennis yet. But you need to not only treat them, as Bill said, with respect and care, because you want that portion to grow, especially because they're the ones that are going to be hopefully they're 3035, 4045 players. So I would definitely recommend people do what we do, and I mentioned in all my books the drop-in program, and design those programs so they're not necessarily skill dependent. That you're able to utilize drills that integrate players who are more beginner that still benefit advanced players. So, partner fed drills, drop fed drills, toss and block drills, many different drills, or have multiple pros teaching one court of more beginner, intermediate, advanced drills. We try to mix that in because we do want our advanced players to get something out of our program, and they will get something out of a toss and block drill. They will get something out of a fast hands drill, which is a partner fed drill, whatever. So that's just my take on you'll notice all my pictures. I've got anywhere between 20 and 75 players that come to my clinic. And if you're getting that many players, you're getting players that are raw beginners or nearly raw beginners, all the way up to some college level players and beyond.
Yeah.
So that's
great.
To add to that.
No, absolutely. And when you're programming, you want to look at who are your people, and you want to program as many things as you can for your people. Yep. And then you also want to see if there's a category that hasn't been reached yet, and see if you can just throw some stuff against the wall and go, hey, maybe mommy and me will work. Oh, no, don't have enough moms that can make it. Oh, sorry, or daddy and me, parent and me. Who knows? I've tried that before. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. Maybe do live ball, maybe do a singles social thing. I don't know. You have to look at your group, and you have to figure out, how am I going to serve these people? And when you have somebody who says, oh, well, I want a clinic for guys over 40 at 6 a.m. I mean, it's like, all right, well, I'll talk to some guys and see who's available. And I'll tell you what, there aren't a lot of guys 40 that want to get up and play tennis at 6 a.m. But anyway, so
let me say something about that, Bill. Yeah. Because if you're going to do a program, any program, whether any of those that you mentioned or any other tennis clinic, consistency is critical. Because it may not fly the first week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It may not catch on yet. When I took over as the head pro at a club here in Southern Utah, I had a drop-in Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday clinic, and I'd have 1 or 2 people. I never canceled it, and I gave my full hour-and-a-half clinic to that 1 or 2 people. The next week, there were 4 people. Then there were 8. Then there were 12. Then there were 15. There were 27. I mean, it just grew and grew and grew. Yeah. And the club that, when I moved on to open a new club, the club that I left tried to run my clinics, but they said, well, if 3 or less people show up, we're cancel the clinic. And then those 2 people that showed up, they're not coming back.
Right.
And so all the clinics canceled out that I had 20, 30, 40, sometimes 60 or 70 people at. They failed miserably because they initiated what I call immediate gratification. Well, if there's not 4, it's not worth my time. Well, if you don't keep it, then they're not going to come back, and they're not going to bring their friends.
Yes. No, it's funny because I like to unpack things that you say.
Good. let me get the zipper.
Yeah. No, that's good. So, no, and what I'm reading there is the quality of a person who brings people together is somebody who's committed and determined to make something happen. And,
exactly.
And so, and then if you do that and you build it and they come, then that's a culture and a community that you've created. But if you create a community of wait and see, I don't know, since Dave left, it sometimes gets canceled. So I'm going to wait until 9 a.m. before the 11 a.m. on that day to see if it's going to fly. And then I'll maybe sign up. And then nothing happens because everybody's waiting and seeing because they don't trust you. Right now, I'm going to shift gears in a pretty dramatic way here, because I think another big piece of building community is to have the right balance between acceptance and discrimination. And as soon as I say discrimination, people are going to go, discrimination. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't eat a moldy banana. You don't eat a moldy banana. You don't eat the half of the apple that has a worm in it. Maybe if you slice it and you go, okay, worm was out on the outside. This okay. You might eat half the apple, but not the part with the worm in it. And worms are fine. Worms are great when they're in the ground. They're kind of yucky when they're dried up in the street, but you don't eat the apple. Okay, so like for instance, you don't accept the guy who shows up to the club drunk. You don't accept people who stare at people. You don't accept people who sign up for clinics that are completely the wrong level for them, right? You don't accept, sometimes you wish you could not accept a person who's really mean to everybody, so because these people will kill community. So, you wouldn't accept someone who was being creepy, again, worms are great in,
their
in the ground, but you don't want a worm in the women's locker room. Right. Okay. So now I don't know if people know what's going on with Planet Fitness right now, but go look up what's going on with Planet Fitness. I mean, here's an example. This is going to be, maybe a little controversial, but I hope that you at your club will never accept a man dressing in the women's locker room. All right, because Planet Fitness is allowing that, and they are taking a major hit right now for allowing that. So this is, and I'm sorry, I wish I didn't ever have to say that, but this is a reality that people are going to have to face. And I would, should I ever become a director of tennis again, I will put my foot down really hard on this. This will never happen, because it betrays the trust of the privacy of the women's locker room, right. So you want to touch that one at all?
Well, if you're going to allow that, then you might as well just label your club as a completely, you can't have it both ways. You can't have the privacy or the concept of privacy and have the men feeling completely free to walk into the women's restroom, locker room, and change in front of a woman. So you either have to identify your club, in my opinion, as whatever you want to call it, a woke club, a open, diverse club, whatever you want to call it. Fine, I'm fine with that. But make sure you identify it so that the people who sign up the membership or sign on the dotted line are not suddenly transformed into this, oh my God, there's men in here, or men,
right,
or women
right.
in the men's side. It doesn't matter. So I agree. I think if you're going to allow that, then you make sure your club identifies that, even though I don't agree with it. I know you don't agree with it, Bill, but I think if the club, if that's the way the society is moving to this completely no holds bar, as far as there's no men and women anymore, then you identify your club as such. Then you're fine. I would think. That's my opinion. Maybe
now, and then pulling back a little bit and kind of taking, for me, the emotion out of it, because frankly, it pisses me off. Right. Okay. So I'm, I'm not hiding that part, but now stepping back and then going, okay, rationally, how do I want to market my club? And I guarantee you, if you market your club as you have just described, you will have a really hard time
Yep.
finding any kind of membership. Um, because when people go to the club, they want to feel safe, they want to feel like they belong, they want to go and be healthy.
Right.
They want to have friends, they want to be able to bring their children, they want to mix with other families and other single people, and do so in an environment where they're not threatened in any way. And um, so that's another issue. I'm going to bring up another sensitive one. So I was working in the Bay Area for almost all my life, and the in the last I watched in the last 15 20 years as things in the Bay Area got very strange. And so, and I have a certain political bias, I have a certain religious bias, I have a certain philosophical training bias. I have a way of managing things that I do, and I found that I had to hold back, for the sake of the respect of certain people who were saying things that I wholeheartedly disagreed with, and behaviors that I just couldn't accept, and just go, okay, I'm here to teach them tennis, and that's the best thing I can do, right? And if there's an issue that is affecting their tennis, then I can objectively have a conversation about that. It's not my place to tell a parent how to raise their child,
Right.
unless they're being disruptive in the lesson.
Right.
They're being disruptive. That's my only issue.
Right.
They're either behave in the lesson or they don't, right? But I had a situation where I had these two boys, and one of them, the parents were transitioning.
Both
And I'll tell
parents?
you, huh?
Both parents?
The parent was transitioning the child.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so now I have this situation of, the pronouns and this and that. And so, I want I love these kids and I want the best for them, right? And so my workaround was to call that kid only by their first name. And do believe, this is really sad for me, I do believe that the parents were harming the child in what they were putting into them in terms of chemicals and whatnot. And it played out in the tennis, and so here I'm trying to teach the kid tennis, and I'm like, so and so seems a little weak today, and they seem a little like low energy, and I don't know what's going on, but the other kid is vital and running around and can stand up to it, and the other one, who's the same age and should be on the same developmental track, can't keep up. So but that's heartbreaking for me, and and then also I find it disturbing that there are people who are going to encourage and enable that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there comes a point where you either, and I'm not saying this is the right approach, but you approach these parents and just say, this is very frustrating, or very not frustrating, very awkward, and creates a dichotomy of difficulty in training this group with your child, and you may do better in this other group or this other club or this other environment that you might not, might be more, I won't say accepting of it, but it's just more comfortable with it, for a lack of a better word. I don't know if that's the right answer, or they learn to, because quite frankly, there's two realms here. One is, we as pros have to kind of accept the fact that this is happening in our environment, especially if you're in a environment that is a little bit more prevalent, societal acceptance. And yet, in my opinion, these people who are transitioning have to recognize they're different. They're going to get singled out sometimes because the people don't understand their thought process or whatever, that makes them have to change thing. So I don't know if that's a right answer or wrong answer. I'm just saying that I think there's a balance of both ends of us have to try to be accepting of it, I guess, and try to work within the concept of it. Just as no different than if we've got ADHD, OCD kid in our tennis class, and they're just off the wall chart, and we're trying to maintain them as well. So
Right.
there's exceptions in every. I mean, I had a woman at the club I was the general manager and director of tennis at, who would just stand butt naked in front of every woman in the locker room and carrying on a conversation, and just every woman would come to me and go, it is so uncomfortable when that woman does that. And I'm like, well, maybe you need to just turn and walk away.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
walking in there to tell her. And unfortunately, the woman ended up committing suicide. But I think it was a lot of issues that she was dealing with, and maybe that was part of her issues, that she
Yeah.
didn't understand how uncomfortable she was making people. But then that discomfort caused her to have no friends, which maybe caused her to go off the deep end. I don't know the
Well,
answer.
yeah, and I think you handled that very delicately. I really appreciate your wisdom on that. And it goes back to what you said originally, that we're part of a greater tennis community. And so it's like, I mean, I have students who come to me who they don't learn very well from me. Our personalities don't mesh. And I go, you know what? Why don't you go see Becky over at this club? I think you two would get along great, right?
Right.
And no, I'm not trying to pawn you off. I mean, don't you feel the same thing? I feel that our arrangement just isn't working, right? And so in the same way, any other kind of issue along this, some clubs have different cultures. Some clubs are more social. Some clubs are much more competitive. Other clubs have a blend. Some clubs are super busy. Others are very low key. I mean, so, helping people find the place where they're going to fit in better is important. And I have a quick story. So I was at this one club, and I had this woman who had played an away match at another club where I knew the other director, and apparently there was all this drama, right? She came back and she told me all these horrible things that happened during that match. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. So I called the other director, and I'm like, oh, hey, Evelyn had an issue. You may be aware, that there was some drama, right? And he's like, oh yeah, did you know that she used to be a member of this club? Right. So he tells me the background about the origin, about where all that started. I'm saying, okay. So I said, hey, you know what, Steve, we're going to pretend like I called you out. This is the story I'm going to tell. I called you out. You got to the bottom of it, and you punished people. And I'll go back to my lady and go, oh yeah, I called them, and but I know the real truth of what's going on. So if it happens again, I'm going to be like, you know what? This has to end on your end. Let go of the bitterness that you feel towards that place, because now you're here.
Right.
So, and these things happen. I mean, there can be inter-club negativity. So the whole tennis community can be put at peace if we, as tennis pros and collaborators at the director or head pro level, get along and collaborate and try to do the best we can for all of our people.
Well, and I think every club has got to recognize. I mean, we've tried. I mean, I'm in a much smaller area than I was in Phoenix, and before I was in Southern California, where we had many clubs that worked pretty well together. And I found the smaller the town, the more isolated the clubs tended to be, and they did not want to have inter-club matches. They did not want to have. There was just a small town mentality, and it's unfortunate. And but I've basically concluded one thing, and that is, I will not care what other clubs do. Say, I really could care less. I will make my club, my program, as positive, as valuable to my students and something they enjoy. And I will not try to find chinks in the armor of my opposing clubs. I will instead spend that time in a positive manner trying to make my club be as proficient, prolific, positive, and people will be talking about our club differently than they talk about those other clubs. And that's all I think we should and can do if we're really in this for the right reason.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so let's move on to bullying behavior. So I had a situation. I came into this club as director, and the culture of the place was just a train wreck, right? So one of the things I heard early on was that USTA teams had taken over, and that nobody could even play. Nobody could even come and play socially on a Saturday morning anymore because the USTA teams took over. So I made a new rule that no USTA match could start on a weekend before 11 a.m.
There you go.
And oh man, people were so angry. And I got all this bullying behavior towards me there. Everybody's like, I'll go to the general manager, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, sorry, she's behind this too, So, and the joy of people who could get up on a Saturday morning and go play for, an hour or 2 or 3 hours and then go home and do their thing and not have to be on a team, right? And then another thing that was happening would be there would be a women's 3-0 team, and then their practice time ended here, and then the men's 4-5 would be the next thing. But the men's 4-5 guys would come onto the court before the women's 3-0 time was over. And I had to go over and go, no, you have to knock that off. Do not walk on that court until exactly that minute. Okay, look at your watch. I'm looking at my watch. Okay, now you can go. And then I'll be like, hey, ladies, you know what? Look, can you start packing up with 3 minutes to go? Because it goes both ways, Right. So if you linger and take up their time, then they're probably going to respond by doing the other thing. So, as a club, club sort of means, to me, it means cooperation. You all come together to cooperate to make a bigger thing happen.
I would say that running a club, I've mentioned this many times. I think every club director, head pro, whatever, teaching pro should coach high school tennis for a minimum of 3 or 4 years, minimally, because the learning that has to take place, because just like at a high school team, the communication that has to take place if your team is going to be, number one, cohesive, number two, successful, is just like a club. You've got to have definitive rules defined and communicated to members, whether it be in a online form, whether it be in a handout form or a brochure, whatever, that the rules, and once the rules are established and clearly set, then most of the members will communicate those rules and facilitate those rules pretty well. But the clubs that don't do well are the ones that have no rule established. So people, there's entitlement. There's people who think, well, I'm 4-5, so I should get the court ahead of the 3-0 women there, or man, or whatever. And it just, you create that almost inevitable holier than thou mentality of members. And I think that's where you've got to try to be as communicative, clearly set rules, just like timelines. When your time is up, please do this, and this before it's your time. Do not walk out on the court. Those are the things that are common sense issues that I think a lot of people don't think about that they should.
Yeah, no, it's good. And, to piggyback off that too, Vic Braden famously said, if there are no 4-5s at your club, it's your fault. So, so what you do want to do, if people come to your club and they improve and they get better, and you expand out your base because you have more people playing at different levels, that's a great way to build community too, but that can be sabotaged. It can be sabotaged. Like, you can sabotage it by creating a culture of sandbagging. because maybe your club loves to win the D- national championship at the 3-0 level. So you have this team full of 3-5s, you know, but what does that do? It creates this glut, and it makes it hard for people to go up, and they want to go up. And so you have real true 3-0s who should be playing 3-0, but they can't get on the team.
Right.
So, you might think there's a lot of glory in winning the 3-0 national championship, but really there's almost none. Right. So, I mean, it's a fun thing though. Don't let me diminish it too much. I just want to diminish it a lot, but not too much. But, the more you get people matriculating up and don't take the whole national championship and sectionals thing that seriously, then I think you're going to actually have a healthier club.
Right. Hey, I got to run.
Okay.
Bill, I apologize. I've got a very important meeting here at 1 o'clock. I've got to head out to. So let's talk about this further if we can in another one. I know you'll continue talking from your point of view. And I love these discussions, but I will look forward to seeing you guys. And I see Steve is right there on the.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, don't keep him here, Steve. He has to go.
I gotta run. I'll let you guys hash it out.
All right, take care, Dave.
Okay, you guys.
See you, David.
See you, Steve. Bye-bye.
All right. So, how you doing, Steve?
Good, Bill. I'm sorry. I'm late to the show here. I apologize.
Do you feel terrible?
I do.
Okay,
I'll make it up to you in Palm Springs. I promise.
Oh, am I going? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I was assuming if it's the World Conference, they want you there, but hopefully you'll make it.
I don't know. Anyway, moving on from that. But I don't know. How did you catch any of what we were doing here before you came in?
I didn't. Can you inform me real quick? Give me the lowdown.
Just as a quick overview, we were talking about developing community at a club, and we went over threats to community, and then part of it is, when people are overly political, or, they share their opinions about certain things that maybe people don't need to know, or they allow behaviors at their club that are damaging to other people. Like, we wouldn't allow somebody to be in the club who's drunk all the time, or staring at people, or, this, that, or the other thing. But anyway, I mean, we can just kind of go and get some ideas from you about what are some of the things that develop community in a club, and what are some things that destroy it?
Okay. As far as developing, I think just, choices. And what I mean by that is, different, clinics, offered, a lot of, events, maybe like, breakfast at Wimbledon event, where everyone comes and watches Wimbledon in the morning and then plays a little tennis afterwards. Something that, not everyone is super competitive that plays tennis. They just want to kind of meet up with their friends, play a little bit, but it's more the social aspect.
Yeah. Let me break in on that for a second, because you're saying something different than what we said before.
Okay.
So I want to drill down into that, because one thing that Dave and I talked about was, developing specific programs for specific people.
Okay.
And then he has this thing called Super Saturday, where anybody at any level can come. But it's a great thing to have a social event that everybody can come to, young and old, right? Brand new beginner to 5-0 level player, because everybody's coming together to watch tennis.
Yeah.
So what are some other things like that where it's a social event that opens it up to everybody to be together in one room, one place?
I think just maybe getting local community involved. I'll give you an example. Even though they're not a small business, Chick-fil-A does a lot of like community events. And so I talked with, because we have a Chick-fil-A like 2 minutes from our tennis center. And so I talked to the marketing manager of that specific location. And what we got them to do is come out, cater for a little bit. They brought out the chicken, the cow himself, and he was playing some tennis. He was playing some tennis, because the guy who dressed up in the cow actually was like a 3-5 tennis player, so he could get out there and hit some balls. And the kids loved it, the adults loved it, and it just, like I said, just kind of, because everyone at the club always hits that Chick-fil-A anyway, just because it's so close. And so that kind of community involvement, but I definitely stress like small business, locally owned restaurant, bar, something. Mm-hmm.
I want to break in there too, because I used to live in kind of a small town where you saw people at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right. So you're shopping and you're like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. And you stop me chit chat, right, for a minute. And it's a good feeling. Right. So I love what you're saying there about, building that at Chick-fil-A, because then, they're going to see people at that.
Yeah.
And encouraging people to go out, hey, hey, you know what? Clinic's over. Why don't we all go over to Chick-fil-A?
Right.
The other night, I have this thing called Monday night drop-in doubles. And all of a sudden, not enough people came. And there were 2 people showed up and me. And pretty much nobody was into it. We were just like, hey, do you even feel like doing this right now?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, how about this? Let's hit for like 20, 30 minutes and then go for a warm, sudsy adult beverage.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfect because there's a Stanley Cup playoff game I really want.
Right. Right.
Okay. So the program sort of pooped out for the night, but we ended up having a really good time going out together and having a conversation, getting to know each other. So I would say another thing would be open to spontaneous stuff that comes up, Yeah. And I think to piggyback on my own thing here, I'm like on a diatribe now, is when you get an opportunity to celebrate something or show sympathy for someone, take that. So, you're going to find out that like somebody's parent or spouse has passed.
Yeah.
Or they got the job they've been wanting for a long time. They got the promotion. They got this or that. I mean, be ready to, sympathize, be ready to celebrate with people, because that's a big thing. I mean, people want to be recognized and they also want to know that people care.
No, that's true. And also what I think's a good idea too is, at the clinics, I'll, once in a while say, hey, anyone have something going on? Because a lot of people are either in business for themselves or have like a side gig, like, for instance, one lady was a tutor. She was a teacher, but she also tutored on the side. Well, 2 of my clients, their kids needed a tutor, and so, so it works out that way, where I think if, people feel more of a true sense of community and family and everyone's helping each other out. So I think just to make announcements like, hey, anyone got anything going on, anyone working on something, because you never know who might need them.
Well, that's really good. I'm going to kind of take it in a different direction here too. So, because this is important. I mean, I think it goes back to that Teddy Roosevelt quote. Nobody knows how much nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I had a little streak going for 3 summers in a row with my junior program, because we put all the high school kids together in this one thing, right? And they'd be split up in different levels. There'd be gold, silver, and bronze groups, right? And then, but we would always all come together for game time. So everybody played together for the big games, and it was awesome. And we would also go to professional tennis matches, So this is another really big thing. Take your whole group of people and go all together to a professional or a college tennis match near you. And that shared experience is so big. But the streak that I had from all these social experiences with the high school kids is it almost seemed like it was 3 summers in a row. We made a couple, right? So two of the kids would pair off, and they would and then it became famous within the program. And like there was this kid Fernando and a girl named Noreen, and so they became known as Fernandarine. And so I mean that kind of stuff also, when new friends are made and now they're going to see each other in the high school season playing on different teams, and now they have a friend on the other team.
Yeah.
It just makes it a lot more fun for everybody.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, you're right about the tennis. We have the top challenger event in the world. Actually, it's the highest paying challenger. So we had 8 of the top 50 players on the ATP playing in it. And I would mention it and encourage people to go, but I think I could have taken it a step further and just said, hey, let's get a group of 20 people and let's just all go there together instead of kind of everyone doing it on their own time, if that makes
and sit together and talk trash and have side bets and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a funny one. All right. So I went with my club, and this was way back. This was the SAP Open. So Agassi has started this match against somebody, and he's doing quite well. So I turn to my friend and I go, hey, what's the over and under on how many games the other guy's gonna win? Right. And so he came up with 4.5, right? So I got the under. I have the under, and we're not even betting for anything. There's no money or anything on
right.
Maybe it was for a beer. Okay.
Yeah.
So the over and under is 4.5, right? So Agassi is like beating this guy so well. He's serving for the match at 6-2 in the second, having won the first set 6-2. And if he wins his serve game, I will win.
Right.
But clearly he lost his serve game on purpose because he wanted to get a couple of more games in before beating the guy.
Right.
So he took it easy for a game.
Yeah.
And then the other guy got the over, and then we're going nuts, and everybody else is like yawning because it's a routine win for Agassi. But we had something riding. We had some pride riding on it.
Yeah.
So those are some kind of some things that you can do. I mean, another thing that you could do is you could actually create this sort of wagering thing in your club. Put 2 players together and have a third party put an over under on it, and then you can kind of tease the one guy who's not favored.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are some fun things to do. You know what's going to happen here? My battery is down to 9%, so we probably have a couple of more minutes here.
Okay. So, if I could just, I would like to mention, Bill, one thing that I think hurts clubs. It's great for court usage. And again, as a moneymaker, you can't argue with it, but it takes a little bit away of the community aspect, and that is leagues, league play, I believe, in tennis centers, because it becomes very cliquey in a way. And they just they show up for their league match and that's it. I'm fortunate enough to where I have players, especially from my 4.0 and up, they'll have their league matches, but they'll want to get in some training too in my classes. But I've noticed that where it's like, cause then it's a choice, either choose to play a league match or choose to partake in a class or an event or something. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, you need a balance, because some
Yeah.
people are not going to be happy if they don't get to compete at what they see as a high level.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, you will always have cliques. But you can try to introduce people to different people, you know, and you will always have some people who just can't stand each other, right? So don't force them together.
Yeah,
You
true.
know, I mean, see, here's something I think people do wrong. They think that everybody has to get along with everybody, and everybody has to accept somebody else for something that they just vehemently disagree with. You know, so here, I'll give you an example. There's this guy, and he was a really staunch Democrat. He really hated George Bush, George W. Bush, with a passion. I mean, very vocal about it. People were tired of hearing about it. Even if they agreed with him, they were just sick of hearing about it. All right. So unfortunately, he fell down on the court. He got a concussion. I had to call 911. 911 came. They were like, "What's your wife's name?" He got that right. What's 7 minus 9? He said -2. And then they go, "Who's president of the United States?" And he didn't know. And everybody went, he has a brain injury. No, he has a brain injury, because we know he knows who the president is. But see, when people, you know, so, you know, you can't, sometimes people like overstep their bounds. And I think one thing that's happening in society is people are pushing their personal agenda to the front, and everybody has to accept their personal agenda, or now they're a bigot.
Yeah.
Right. Or they're, you know, a insert pejorative, you know, liberal. And I don't think we should be treating each other that way. I think, you know, when we come to play tennis, we should just be tennis players, and we should leave politics and sexuality and religion and, you know, other controversial topics to the side. And if you can discuss those politely with your friend, fine. You know?
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm not at the club to thrust my politics, my sexuality, my you know, religion on anybody.
Right.
If anybody wanted to hear about it, I will gladly explain why I'm a libertarian almost. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I can't, you know, and I'm not even really truly a libertarian, but, you know, I don't know. So anyway, so those kinds of things can be very divisive, and then it makes people feel uncomfortable, because like, why are we talking about this? I just want to play tennis.
Right. Completely agree.
All right. So any other good tips or stories about a time when building community worked, or, you know, things that we need to do?
I think we hit on it, you know. We talked about during the day, maybe getting, you know, like we said, the local Chick-fil-A involved, or a local restaurant involved, do some catering. I think at night too, if there's a local, you know, sports bar or something that people can gather around, you know, it doesn't mean you have to drink, you know, it could just mean to watch a game or what have you. I think that's good. I think that's just really good camaraderie too. Makes people feel like they're a part of something. And I'll definitely have to include the wagering now, Bill, on on matches. But yeah, it'll only for, not for money, only for fun. I don't live in Vegas, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's just kind of funny if it's like a social match and you go, "I got Steve on this one."
Right.
I'm going with Steve. You know, I don't know. So, no, and you know, the one thing that I think is really key here too is that, you know, and you touched on it, is there's something magical that happens when people are eating together.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the vulnerability of watching other people chew, or, you know, but when people sit down and eat, then there's sort of this familial thing that happens, and And then that's what you want. And
Yeah.
you know, I like to say often, aren't we just one big happy family?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the two people who hate each other might glare at each other from across the room, but then they look at all the other people and they go, "Oh yeah, we are."
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree.
All right. Any final thoughts?
No, like I said, I'm just sad I couldn't hear what you and Dave had to talk about, but you know, send me the recording and I'll definitely watch, because he's a great guy, and very informative. So
Yeah. Well, we covered some controversial stuff, so you will want to go back and look, because you know, I think it's important in this day and age to be clear about expectations and what you will accept and what you won't accept, and that you know, and that you know, you accept people as they are, but certain behaviors, you know, are not going to be acceptable. And so you know, like I said, we wouldn't want a guy who's drunk, and we wouldn't want you know, a woman who's really mean to people. And we don't want kids who are dangerous in clinics, and the like.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
All right.
Agreed.
Hey, thanks for coming out.
You bet.
And thanks for watching, everybody. So that's it for today. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks so much, Bill. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.